We're on. Okay, I'll call the city council workshop for Tuesday, August 23rd to order. 2023 budget discussions. This is for council information and opening comments. Jenny.
Thank you, Mayor Ryan. Good evening, members of the council. Round two for tonight. We're going to have the same approach as last week. Before I get into a couple opening remarks, which will be consistent with last week, but since we have new departments here, I want to kind of reiterate the same thing. Some of the additional documents you have in front of you. There is a downtown master plan study memo. I will speak to that during the admin department update. You have two pieces of information, one from Ziegler Cat, and then a summary of quotes for the, excuse me, the controlled access camera security system that we've been working on. Those are ARPA funding related items, and we will discuss that in more detail in September. But I wanted you just to have this information for your review over the next few weeks until we formally discuss it at a meeting. And then I provided you two documents that are the same as the ones in your packet, but they're in color and they're a little easier to read. So I will go through those during our admin update as well. They're the land use needs and the facilities summary for City Hall to talk about some of those pieces for next year. Proposed anyways. So my opening comments. Thank you, Kiki. Perfect. So as a reminder, for the council, for the departments, so this is our first draft of each department's budget. We've had one budget meeting. I know some department heads have had more conversations with Maggie working through details than I have, but this is just to give you a starting point of where our department budgets are at for next year. This is lots of information. Last week seemed to go well, although it was a little bit of a rush to get everything in, but it seemed overall pretty effective. So hopefully it was time well spent for you, and we will continue to use the same process. Please ask clarifying questions tonight if you're looking for more information to make sure you understand what the departments are talking about. Follow up with me if you have questions later so I can funnel those questions and make sure the entire council has that information. We talked about the building matrices. We are working on that. Feedback on the process. Anytime, please let me know if you have feedback on the order of how we approach our budgeting process. Same for staff as well. Let me know if you have feedback on that process so we can work to improve that for next year. And to your question, Mark, we will compile all of the new items and requests and things for next year's budget. Maggie and I will work on that to bring to you in September. So you will have a summary of all of that and can start to work on prioritizing for our budget. So you can just sort of hear everything now, and then we'll get something on one document for you so you can work on that. And a big thank you. Thank you to the staff for all your time spent working on the budgets, to the city council for your time listening and working through with us and helping to give us direction and strategy. It's a lot of effort and time, and I think it's we're moving forward really nicely in developing this whole process for the second year, and I really am pleased with how it's coming together. So with that, I think we will kick off with Amber in some fashion. If it's community center, parks, I don't know, but
we'll go parks because that's the first in your packet. Before I get into any of that, I do want to give you guys a quick update on the master planning process, since it very much ties into the strategic plan and the capital improvements. We have finished our initial intake survey. So we had over 200 people take the survey, representing over 400 people. So you could respond for your whole family. So over 400 people were identified or used this survey. Right now we had a design workshop in August, and they are putting together some of the concepts We are going to be presenting them to the community. We're having an open house September 13th is what our plan is so far. So come mid-September, we're going to have those concept designs for City Park and the Camp Lincoln parcels. So it still ties into some of this. Some of these items we know need replacing. Some of those things we know are going to happen, and a couple of them are identified through the capital improvement, through the strategic plan already. So want to give you guys an update on that and formally invite you to our open house in September. So more information to come on that one. But we will start with parks. I have some extra information that I gave you guys in your packet with the building matrix, as well as just a list of the kind of long range infrastructure planning. The capital improvement summary here is more or less a short version of the building matrix. This capital improvement plan, I put in all things that I'm planning for in the next 4 years. So it's kind of the Cliff Note version to the building matrix. The building matrix has a lot of information on there. You pretty much only need to focus in on the first few columns. But what I did is I pulled out the next 4 years and put it into this capital improvement summary. So for the items on this list, you should have a corresponding infrastructure plan, which will describe them each a little further. So for parks, we continue to work through getting updates to Pocket Park, continuing to update the landscape there, and needing to update the anti-graffiti. So both of those things have an item for next year. And then a lot of the Camp Lincoln parcels, all of those still continuing to save money for that project.
Amber, I have a quick question.
Yep.
I haven't been under that tunnel for, I don't think, all summer. Is there a lot of graffiti there right now?
We are dealing with our second graffiti this summer. Kind of what's happening is the anti-graffiti that they originally put on is starting to peel off. And so we'll have to remove that stuff, put it on. Right now it's the graffiti is coming. Anti-graffiti is supposed to like run, and then it's not supposed to adhere to the wall. Right now it's adhering.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thankfully, no, it's not a major issue. It's not a weekly occurrence, but we're at twice this summer.
Well, I asked because if there is something there that is something that's a high priority, remove it and
Yes.
get it taken care of.
Yep, we
as
try
soon
and
as
get it
possible.
removed as quick as possible. Most definitely. So yeah, that's on the list. We're working very closely with Public Works and trying to create a plan for this one, but that's where some of the funds are dedicated for next year. As well as we need to replace the hot water heater in the Zamboni garage. So that's about the cost of a 100-gallon commercial water heater.
That's gas, right?
Think it's electric. Might be gas. I would have to confirm. I think we can do either.
It's what?
I said, I think we can go either way.
Okay.
So that one is there, for the warming house and garages, and then for the parks and trails, it's Pocket Park, and then continuing to save for Camp Lincoln, continuing to save for Gull Lake Trail, future maintenance. And that's where most of the parks and trails is for saving. You guys have questions on that so far of anything that's on the capital improvement plan for next year?
Paved trail maintenance, assuming that's not the Paul Bunyan,
Nope.
no?
So
which-
the Paul Bunyan is under the DNR's
Right.
jurisdiction. And we've talked to them a few times as we receive feedback on the condition of it, and they have their assessment strategies, but very limited funding for.
Right, I gave it an assessment last Monday, riding from
Yes.
here to Pequot and, almost threw out my neck, some
Yeah.
bumps.
It's,
But is this money that we're budgeting for the trail that's gonna be coming in then?
yep,
the
this will
Gull Lake
be
Trail?
for the future.
Okay.
Gull Lake Trail.
Just a pet peeve of mine. You talk about hot water heater. Not a hot water heater, it's a water heater. Why would you heat hot water?
I knew somebody was.
Touche, Don. I'll blame the manufacturers. The
Yeah, I
water
don't
heater.
remember that.
Okay. So a couple of things that are not in here, if you skip ahead, well, I'll start with the building matrix. So, work in progress as we go here. Trying to identify kind of what the replacement cycle is, the current cost, and what year we're gonna be needing to replace. So really, you can just look at, up to column 2023, and then after that, it auto populates with a 2% increase. So in creating this building matrix, everything is at year 0. We're not taking into account if it needs to be updated in 2 years or 4 years. This is just a straight across the board. It does not reflect any additional savings that need to be done right now. Okay, so I want to make that clear. This is just generally kind of, over 15 years, what the cost would be, but without additional savings. So you kind of have an idea there. When it's parks and trails, that's about roughly 1.7 million in replacement costs over 15 years. And when you look at the warming house and garages, that's an additional just shy of 270,000.
So are you doing this based on 2% increase?
Correct. So most of the sheet you don't have to look at because it just auto calculates. As we work through the replacements, we'll get updated costs, updated years, and continue to refine it. And if it's helpful in the future, in terms of pairing up the capital improvement with the building matrix, I can start calculating the replacement year and what additional savings might be needed. So, and if that would be helpful to you guys, please let us know.
Mhm.
Well, and Amber, we'd probably want to, we could factor in the money that we set aside last year. The council recalls, we set aside 100,000 for each
Yes,
community center, parks department, at least to help get some of these things. So if you had a need, then the first couple of years, if we haven't built up the fund yet, we have something to work with. But that's certainly not going to get us too far without continuing to contribute to that.
In terms of the budget, I do want to point out a couple of things. In terms of our expenses, I did not put in any additional seasonal help. We do have more seasonal staff in the winter, and we do not have any seasonal staff in the summer. So right now we're kind of operating as we have been, seeing every year is a different year, seeing how this year goes. But that is very much something that is on our minds as we continue to look towards the addition of the Gull Lake Trail, the addition of Camp Lincoln, and just really what are our needs for maintenance in the winter. It's interesting.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
almost threw my back out on that rink too.
Yes. Um,
It was a loss when Terry retired. I'll say that much. He did a
it's a
great
wealth
job.
of knowledge and, yes, trying to get enough staff that are trained to operate the equipment, over the weekends has been a challenge since I've been here. So it's just something on our mind and I wanted to point that out to you. There's no changes in terms of staffing, but it's very much something on our radar. And in the same vein, because we do not have an operable chiller, that's about $10,000 in maintenance that I've taken out of the budget. They had been spending roughly $10,000 a year to maintain it, in its later stages. So a lot of that money has either been put towards, capital improvements or operating costs, not necessarily professional services and, maintenance. So should that come back, that money will need to be again used for the professional services of starting it up and operating some of that, the utilities, the maintenance of that equipment. So it is currently removed.
How old is that chiller now?
It was updated in 2019. But it has, pretty much hasn't worked in about 3 years.
Whenever the sun, more or less like the later part of February, I started a adult pond hockey league, the pickle pond hockey league with Amber 2 years ago now.
Yep.
When we get to the
This
latter half of the season, which is January and February, the ice just tends to deteriorate when you have sunshine beaming on it and temperature is probably within the 30 or 25, 30 range, just heats up.
Mhm.
Then that chiller will counteract that to, I believe, freezing temps, right? 32.
Yeah.
Without it,
You can set the floor at different.
And I believe the chiller was past its due when it was updated anyway.
Yeah, I think generally they have a pretty long lifespan.
Yeah.
20, 30 years. But yes, because of different things, and changing the coolant chemical, different things have happened and we have just chosen not to repair it until we determine the future of the entire infrastructure.
which is wise.
One thing that I just let the council know, I did talk to Amber a little bit about this. The projects. You got the day-to-day operational stuff, you gotta do the mowing, the trimming and all that stuff. And then there's projects, things that gotta get done. And when it comes to the number of people available to help, projects don't happen. It especially, and so then you either have to hire it out, which costs, or I don't know. So like you said, there'll be more on that, I'm sure.
It's just something we're trying to pay attention to right now and try and understand it, what's not getting done, how detrimental or not that may be, how long can you go? Definitely do not want any safety concerns and we will draw the line before that.
Was Terry seasonal?
Terry, no, he was year round, full time.
And that his position has been replaced with
Yep,
someone?
they started, his name is Jeff, he started end of January.
Okay.
So he's just over 6 months in. Other questions on parks, trails?
What is the status of the trail?
They are nearing final, like I believe about 90% final design. They've gotten feedback from the county. They've resubmitted to the county. Utilities they've gotten those plans submitted to utilities. Kind of where one of the big question marks is coming in is in the lakeshore portion.
Correct.
And the archaeological survey. So we're still trying to get a redesign through there. Trying to get that all finalized. Land acquisitions coming along. So I think we're looking at probably just after Labor Day. Diving into that one pretty deep with the city attorney and Jenny and the property owners. So that should get rolling pretty good here in September. And then the DNR will have to do final design. So ultimately, we're hopeful to still bid this fall. But kind of contingent on how the rework of the lakeshore area goes and, definitely on our radar of increasing costs and where that might land and how that may or may not impact the grants in the project. So it's something we discuss regularly, but with so many still unknowns, we just kind of keep it on our radar and checking out our options and.
Okay.
One last question I have for you is going back to the parks and, or the capital improvement plan summary on the paved trail maintenance. That $3,500 amount for the 2023 and then increasing, I'm assuming about 2% beyond.
Yep.
Where did you come up with that figure? And that's just for the Nisswa portion, I'm
Yep.
presuming, yeah.
That's just an Nisswa portion. A while back, I heard about trying to plan for about $1,000 per mile.
Okay,
And we're about 3.5 miles. So this is gonna be like your crack filling and overlay type thing. This would not account for replacement. So we have to maintain the trail for 30 years. And at that point, that's about the lifespan. It's a mini road. It's a mini road. So we'll have to determine, well before then, what we would like to do and kind of get ourselves a little running room.
have you and Public Works been in discussion about that amount of money, if it's gonna be able to cover? If
Not
you're budgeting
necessarily,
out that far out.
not necessarily like if this is gonna cover it. We started a few years ago and now this year is the first year that we've gotten up to the full 3,500. We have talked a little bit about more of like, how are we going to manage the maintenance of it? Kind of the daily maintenance doesn't need to be cleared, who's checking it. No, nothing has been determined on any of that, but as we've talked for efficiencies,
Mhm.
it's been a topic that's come up, but haven't sorted out like who's doing what necessarily or any updated costs.
Is this gonna be groomed in the winter?
That also has not been determined. It is approved for snowmobile use. And the Gull Lake Drifters have asked if that may or may not be something. We kind of left it at if they would like to pursue grooming that and making it an identified trail, that they would present that to the city.
I'd be curious to see what type of detriment, I don't know how to put it, with all that additional use in the winter, the Paul Bunyan Trail incurs because of the snowmobile
Mhm.
traffic and the grooming
Yeah.
and re-grooming, what that does to the quality and the longevity of that said trail. So we only have 3.5 miles, but this is gonna go all the way
Right.
around Gull Lake. If we're gonna do it, then Lakeshore is, then East Gull, I believe, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So that is probably,
It is approved
rabbit
for
hole.
snowmobile use. The question is to groom or not groom. We will not remove the snow.
okay.
Good on all things parks, trails and fun?
Mhm.
Okay. So we also oversee the community center budget. Again, same thing. Your capital improvement plan is the Cliff Note version of the building matrix. So you got kind of the next 4 years identified on the capital improvement plan. Last year we started with a plan of replacing tables and chairs annually. And so that has been completed again for this year. That was 30 chairs and 5 tables, and we are going through at least 30 chairs a year. They do hold up, but they've had them for quite a while, so we're going through them rather quickly right now. And then upcoming things, knowing that we're going to need to replace the carpet, some of the AV equipment will be coming up since that ages faster with technology. So that is on there, and then it's gonna be due for staining the exterior. Bathroom updates, things like the mirrors, the vanities, potentially tile and partitions. More of the aesthetics, and then some of it is the functionality.
It's got a water softener in it, doesn't it?
Correct.
And that's holding up okay.
So far.
I just jinxed it.
So, most of this one is again, just trying to save for some of those upcoming projects. You do have a building matrix for this one as well. Some of the items have been identified with a year, and again, you know, as we work through it, we'll continue to update the lifespan, the cost, the year of replacement. But right now, this one over the course of 15 years is projecting about 453,000 in replacement costs.
You having a lot of, are there a lot of weddings over there? Like, wedding?
I think we counted
receptions?
about 6 last year, 6, 7.
Drop down.
Yeah, it's COVID, you know, still. I think there was Megan was able to get a few back from all the COVID things. So many of them did reschedule, but I think there's still a little bit of getting back into some of that swing.
Yeah, I think Terry was saying that there were close to 20 a year. COVID hit, went down. So
Yeah.
They're hoping it'll.
So I think about, I want to say maybe 6 to 10, 12, 6 to 10 weddings. There's more graduation, birthday, anniversary parties than there are weddings. Predominant, I think I sent this matrix to Jenny. But mostly it's nonprofits and classes that utilize it.
Thank you.
The what?
We rented for 3 days.
Oh, yeah.
So there was a little bit of reduction, but I mean, that was great because then you're not rushing.
Yeah.
I wish more people would do that.
We try hard to explain the benefits of it.
Any other questions for Amber, anyone? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber.
Thanks, Amber.
I'm sure I'll have questions and I'll just shoot them to you all. Yeah.
Welcome back.
Excuse me. Well, this year did not turn out probably how we expected it was going to when I was standing here last year.
if you recall, some of the things we were looking at last year, we were looking at a large expansion project with Schaefer's, possibly doing a development, new lift station, possibly a water system, a second full-time employee in the sewer department. None of that happened. It's all, I would say, put on hold for the time being. No real information on that. So that has changed how this looks. Maybe some of you that have been on the council for a while are probably familiar with the cash flow document that we have prepared with PFM. That greatly affects how this looks from year to year. So that's something we'll be getting into in time to come. Let's see, so looking at what Kiki has up there to begin with, it kind of lists out some of the equipment that we're looking at, rolling equipment that we're looking at for the sewer department coming up. And this is stuff that I will talk about a little bit more as we come into the discussion of the budget. The one piece of equipment that would be replaced, or we're looking to replace in 2023, is a portable generator. That is the original generator that we have. It's still in really good working condition. It has relatively low hours, but what it is loud. If any of you have experienced it, you can't have a conversation standing next to it running. And it runs at night most of the time, as that's when our storms and things happen. So we're looking at replacing that or adding to it a machine that's modern with all the insulation packages so that it can, the newer ones, you could be standing next to them and talk for the most part. So that's the one piece of equipment we're looking at adding in 23. A couple others that are coming up in 24. I just want to briefly mention those because they're larger purchases, and they're the first one is a mini excavator. Currently we have a 24 I think it's a D model, John Deere. It's smaller. We use it in a variety of departments, but it's purchased through the sewer department. So we use it for digging graves in the sewer and or in the cemetery, excuse me. And then we also use it to do repairs out at our spray field. It's a bit small. It's perfect for the graves, but for some of the other stuff we'd like to do with it, it's small. So we're going to be looking at upgrading that. I'm in talks with the various dealers and things, trying to size that, get it properly sized. Because one of the other uses we found that is kind of up and coming with those things that we can do with it is feed a wood chipper with it. Right now we do it manually by hand, and it has the potential to create lost time injuries, just nature of handling brush, and then also the limited size of our staff. So that's a piece of equipment we're looking to upgrade to a 50G is the model. So it's quite a bit bigger.
Is that John Deere?
That's a John Deere.
And they still have the same programs
Yes.
that they've always had, which have been
Yes.
really good for the city.
Yes. And we would have liked to have been talking about that a little bit more in detail this year, at least I would have been, and my guys would have liked to have. Unfortunately, like everything else with supply chain issues, if I ordered it today, I can't get it for about 16 months. So it's so we're looking at that as a 2024 purchase. I just wanted you to be aware of it because I'll be bringing it up when I'm standing here again next year, but in more detail.
You think the 50G will be adequate size?
Yeah, there's only one bigger that keeps us in the mini size, at least as far as John Deere is concerned. Is getting, and also for us, it gets to where if we get much bigger, it's the towing it around, the trailer, the truck to move it. So at this size, we still have an adequate trailer and stuff to move it. So it's probably where we need to be. The other piece of equipment, this two is currently, as far as the cash flow document is set up, is we're looking at a back truck, and that will service step stations and lift stations. We use just a very preliminary budget number of $150,000 on that. When I'm able to share the cash flow document with it, you'll see that in there. But the one interesting thing with that, just like the lift station, and it's tied together with the new lift station 12 and with this hiring a second employee. Without the second employee, we don't have enough staff to operate it, so it's on there for 2024. But chances are, unless we see activity over this winter, that will get pushed back another year. And another year until a project, either that project or one like it becomes realized, I guess, is what I would like to say with that. So,
Tom, did you say that the spare lift station pump was 150,000?
oh, the spare lift station pump?
I'm sorry,
No, this was a vac truck.
back truck
Yeah.
was 150?
Yes. And that's just a very ballpark number.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten any quotes from anybody. I'm not sure, but you probably are aware, Jesse, that or
Yeah,
the trucks right now.
A lead time
is-
on that would probably be 6 months or 16 months plus another 8, I'm sure.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we've had a difficult time getting Ford, for instance, to even give us a quote.
Hmm.
They won't even return our phone calls a lot of the time, so. And we talked about that at the last regular council meeting too, in regards to the F-450 we were supposed to purchase last year.
Yeah.
So that we at least have ready, we're ready to go get that if Ford, when Ford is.
Ford's also got back production starting the end of August, I mean, by 50%. So that can be pushed back. That's insane.
I hope you're wrong. That's unfortunate.
Yeah,
It might have to be a better truck like a Dodge.
yeah, because there's only one of the countries that's doing that.
What's that?
They're the only manufacturer in the US that is doing it. Matter of fact, they wouldn't send out there. Notice.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned in this group, with this group last time too, GM, they had their opening for builds and they had orders for 150% of what they can actually produce for next year. So I don't know what that does to them, but that was within 14 days, they were maxed out.
And GM currently is moving a lot of their production out of Canada and Mexico back to the US. So because they're gonna try and remove that, it's a cost reduction.
Okay. But that was from the county. I haven't talked to GM, but so there's a lot of issues with supply chain issues. And that's also something that's going on with John Deere and these excavator that I was just talking about too. Their supplier for excavators was Hitachi. And now they're going to be moving to Yanmar. I don't know how that helps them in this market, but the details of that aren't clear even to our dealer, so he couldn't elaborate yet, so.
Tom, and then looking at the 3 blank spaces, I'm assuming that this is one of those items that we're supposed to be in. The 3 that are blank.
So, the thing to know with the sewer department is it has much less rolling equipment than the maintenance department, so I don't always have a purchase every year.
Sure.
But what we do is every year we put away a small amount of money, so we have an even amount of money for vehicles, or we try to keep it as even as we can. So even though we may have $100,000 purchase next year in that excavator, we put away, and I can't read the number here from here, but we put a much smaller number away. I think it's like $25,000 or $35,000 each year. And that averages out because, the equipment we have in the sewer department are half of the supervisor truck that I drive. There's the sewer truck you're probably familiar with that you see Mike Wagner driving around with. And that's getting to be by now $125,000 truck. Let's see what else we have. We have the tool cat. We also use that in the park department. Let's see what else do we have. You're aware of the generator because I just talked about that, and the excavator, and we have a gator. Those are the rolling pieces of equipment we have in the sewer. So we don't need to buy a new piece of equipment every year in that department, I guess, to try to answer your question.
I think the question though is, we don't see the truck on this list, and shouldn't we have that on there?
I apologize for that. No. And I think the reason I didn't come back and plug that back into this sheet, I guess. I have about 3 or 4 different spreadsheets where that truck exists. And right today, it's not, it's more of a nebulous thing because I'm keying it to the new lift station build, basically the sewer is expanding again, and the addition of a second guy.
Sure.
It's
No, understand.
tentatively 2024.
Okay, well, that answers that. Thanks.
Let's see, so Kiki, if I can have you switch to the actual budget. And I'm not gonna go through this line by line, but I am just gonna point out a few things that you should be aware of or probably have already noticed, and that's, we talk about inflation as being 9.1%. But a lot of our key items went up much more than that. Insurance, 16.7%. Utilities jumped 60%. One, that's because we had just finished the sewer expansion, so we have larger motors online, but there's also a rate increase in there. And then also a severe winter last year too. So that number was huge. Repair and maintenance, 46.3%. So many things that we buy, we're finding have gone up 30+%, and some things have just plain doubled. So when they tell you 9.1%, that's a minimum. So I just want you to be aware of where some of this stuff is at. And then motor vehicles is another one. You used to get a deal on these things. Well, that went up 36.5% for this year too. What we have to put away annually just to keep up with the equipment we have. So. And then the last thing I have is, I'm gonna go over it further, but the other thing you'll see in here is we added 12,800 to hire a seasonal employee for next year to help Mike, kind of to bridge the gap till we can hire a full-time.
Right. Now, question for you on that.
Sure.
I offered a job to a young man that just graduated high school this year to go work on the road. He
Okay.
has no construction experience. He has his high school diploma, $18 an hour, and he turned down the job. He went to go work at Taco Bell. And I asked him about his longevity of working at Taco Bell instead of working at a career company like us, where he could then, we would pay for his trade school eventually, et cetera. Said I would rather work inside an air conditioned building eating free tacos than go bust my what in the field out of state for the same amount of money. So my question to you is, do you think $16 an hour is going to be enough to get some seasonal help, or should that be increased?
I think it's low, to be honest with you.
I do too.
We got very lucky this year. We almost last minute, because I think as my staff and I, and probably Jenny to some extent, we hired Alyssa. She's our person that you see running the lawnmower this year. She's doing a fantastic job, but she applied way after we had started advertising for that. And we didn't have any other applicants. And it seems like if we do get any applicants, some of them are so bad, just something about, you just don't even want to consider them, or they're too young. We had quite a few kids that were, we can't hire them under 18, unfortunately. We can't even have them run a weed whip with the way our insurance and stuff is set up. So.
Well, that's why I wanted to share that story with you, is because it's not just in a city role, it's also in the private sector. And sometimes I can't even go for 22 an hour. And that's changed in the course of a year to 2 years. Similar, Brian hires seasonally. Pickle will do the same thing on occasion. So I would almost suggest, just to make sure you can get that help, is to consider that.
Let me
Consider a increase in that.
share one factor with you on that. So I've discussed, what should our starting wage be with my full-time guys. And the two that are closest to the bottom, when we start talking about $22 an hour for a seasonal, they get upset with that.
Yeah.
Because it's approaching what they have, and they have CDLs and experience and age. They've been with us a while.
Yeah.
And so we're approaching what they're making. And so it becomes a very touchy subject to go
Very
there.
touchy, very fast because of the job market right now is
I
Is
think
what
the
it
way
is.
the economy's running, this summer you'll have kids that are just working $16 an hour. Is that, I'm just saying, another thing too is work ethic too, and some of these kids it's just dropped off over
Yeah.
50 years.
Yeah.
You'll see some that are happy to get to 16, work for the city, some might be going to college, whatever. I mean, I just think it's hard to track. Here, I'm off. That's what my son did. He worked for the city parks. Those days got paid $9. I think it was $9 an hour, maybe $9. I was excited. He was working. Could have made more somewhere.
We've been somewhat fortunate over the years where I've been here. Now, the last two have been by far the toughest to try to fill this position. But what we have had going for us is our full-time staff, a lot of them have children. And we've had here and there one that needs a job and their folks have coaxed them into working
Yeah.
for us and that's helped us get through, so. But yeah, this last year was really tough and I'm just like you, I don't know what, we have the need. We're gonna advertise for what we're allowed. We have to work within our what's that? Pay scale, thank you. That was the word I was looking for.
And pay equity does play a role in that as well, and it's difficult. And so getting creative with other ways, whether it's hiring, signing on, opportunities. I don't want to say bonus, we can't give bonuses, but things like that. There's certainly a need to look at that more. But the structure for government is different and it does pose a challenge, but yeah.
The 18-year-old rule, I'm assuming is our insurance rate. There's no way to, there's a lot of 16-year-old farm kids that work their butts off and be really good at it and probably are better.
I've got a son right now, I'd be plugging in if I could.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Well,
yeah.
you wouldn't be having this individual do operating heavy machinery.
We limit them usually to our F-450s, because basically that's our basic transportation,
Yeah.
move stuff around. It's the lawnmowers. If we get
Not a
one-
mini X.
Huh?
Not a mini X, a skid steer.
Not unless they have an aptitude for it and, all the years I've been here, we haven't had one of those. They run the Gators mostly,
And they
Weed
can't run a
loaders.
1-ton truck and pull the mini X without a CDL anyway.
Yeah, it depends on the gross vehicle weight of that
They can't pull trailers
Yeah.
with it. It's
Right.
little things like that. but-
DOT, yeah. And you have to be 21 to have a DOT. That's also a pain in my butt.
Yep.
Be nice if we could have an exemption from some of that to work around it, but
Yeah.
that would not probably help somebody like Jesse, but
No. Okay, well, we don't
Anyway.
have to continue talking about it, but
yeah,
it's,
it's quite a dilemma.
I just don't want it to be for you next year. And then that 12,800 annually, about 20 weeks
So that would be.
at 16 an hour.
Basically, it's from May till October. And it
Yeah.
always varies on each kid. Usually we can't get them
5 months.
that long. Usually they're going back to school in August or September.
Yep.
But this year we have one who I think will stay till October. She's not really a kid either. She's 32. She's not going back to school as far as I know. So.
Sure.
But most of the time, they're high school kids that are going to their first year of college are the guy we had last year, he went off to the Air Force, so.
Sure.
We had some good kids, though. Anyway. Let's see. I think the next thing I would do, Kiki, is if I can have you go back to the.
Could I ask one question first?
Sure.
I noticed on the budget spreadsheet, in the expenditures, 2022, we had $108,524 in the very bottom one, the refunds and reimbursements. And then for 2023, you don't have anything in there. Is that just a 1-year deal that we had?
I know we had an issue with that, and I think I was. I don't know if we ever clarified that. I was working with Maggie and Jenny to find out what that should be or what that is.
I think that had to do with what we were planning for lift station 12.
Mhm.
And we were needing to bridge the gap with private funding of that lift station.
Okay,
And so in this sheet, it was just a place to plug that because we didn't really have another way to explain how to get all of that to work. But we were budgeting for an increase in fees and then contribution from the developer to help to pay for that. So that was just a placeholder for that, which is why you don't see that in 21 or in 23, because at this point, we don't have any word that that project's moving forward. If we find out anything before we finalize the 2023 budget, we'll adjust that again. But yeah, that was definitely just an odd year budget
Yeah.
planning thing.
yeah, I noticed the fees are up like 80,000, but then this was 108,000, so that's why. Okay, thank you.
No, that's fine. I needed the help, so appreciate that. Yeah, so if I just move into the strategic plan items, I guess next, we've kind of talked about the first one a little bit, I think, yeah, the mobile generator, we've kind of talked about that. I don't know if any of you have any questions about that. We're looking at the $65,000 number that I plugged in there would be if we traded the old one, but since I prepared that, Mike has suggested to me he would like to hang on to that old one as a stationary generator for lift station 1, our biggest lift station outside of number 3. He'd like to hang on to that till we rebuild lift station number 1, which is 24 or 25 is when we're looking to do that. We originally were looking at 25. The guys would like to see us move that up to 24. There's some issues with it that they would like to see corrected. I've talked to John with PFM about doing it in 24. So when you see the cash flow document, it will reflect doing that project in 24. We can move it back to 25 or wherever you see fit. But to show you how it affects the budget, we've plugged it into 24.
Number 3 has a built-in generator, right?
Correct.
And number 1 will have the same.
Number 1 is a very similar size lift station. And so everything we're doing with that is modeled after what we did with number 3.
These are nice generators, by the way.
What's that?
Whacker.
Right now, what happens is we end up chasing our lift stations around with that one portable generator. It's the middle of the night. One guy, the more of them we can switch over to a standby with dedicated, it would be to our benefit, I think, so. The next item I have on here are rebuilding and rehabilitating sewer air release manholes. So we've been doing this for a number of years already. There's quite a few of them from the original system. Obviously they're old and they needed to be redone. Sewer gas is pretty corrosive, so it's not only eating the metal of the valve itself, it's also eating the concrete. The other issue we found is, or that we're correcting or improving, is the manhole access itself. We're putting in a larger manhole to allow tools and things to come down with the guys when they have to work on these things more. So each year we're trying to do a couple of them, and this year will be no different. We're looking at 2 of them for an estimated cost of $30,000. We've had Chantel Excavating do these for the last several years. We're expecting to have them do that again next year, 2 more. Mike tells me he has about 8 more to do, so we'll be doing this for a few more years to get it done. So. The spare lift station pump. So this is something Mike asked me to plug in. It seems to me that we've been replacing one of these bigger pumps in lift stations like number 1 every year, and they kind of go out somewhat unpredictable. We haven't been getting the service life out of them that the manufacturer has suggested. So we feel it's in our best interest to be ready to replace one without going through the whole budget process. Yes, our lift stations are duplicates, so there's 2 of them in there. And problem is though, is that during peak flows, both of them are needed to keep up. in most cases, so. This would allow us to be ready to get one at a moment's notice. You know, basic approval probably with Jenny, and we can have that on the way, so, that's what this is just to have one of those kind of on the shelf and ready to go.
There a long lead time on that as well?
Yep, they're flight pumps and if, now, the good thing is our supplier has had them relatively close by, but that's getting worse. I know our step station pumps our supplier's been out. We have people with rural water, Rural Water Association looking for alternatives. We're not able to get enough of those. And those we replace 10 or 12 of them a year. And we've been able to get, I think Mike got 3 or 4 of them when we ordered 12. So at some point, that's gonna become a crunch. We're gonna have a problem if that continues.
That's something we should just do. Get it done.
Yeah, depending on how the current budget's looking, might be consideration to.
Yeah.
See if, well, and depending on if they could even get them.
I know it's that you can't just have like something like this one, just 2, 3 of them sitting around waiting to be used, you know, but to have at least one on hand is.
So
Can these be I mean, but by the time you replace them, are they even worth rebuilding?
oh, the step station ones are throwaways.
That's what I figured.
And so we do keep a lot of those. Normally, we have about 10 or 12 of them on a shelf. But if you're familiar, Grandview's new development has used quite a few, so a lot of them have gone out there. Some of the other places around town have used them up. And then they, you know, we've been replacing a handful of them a year on the original sewer system too. Well, we ordered 12 like we normally would do. We aren't able to get more than a handful at a time, so we have some on order right today. We've done the budgeting, we're doing the budgeting again this year. They're they're built into the budget. We're just having a lot of trouble getting them, so.
And I was referring to the one you have here in the long range infrastructure plan. Should we?
Yeah, the problem I have with actually putting one on the shelf, I just want to be able to go to our distributor to get it. But for us to put it on the shelf, not all of our lift stations use the same size pump. So I have to wait till we know one's gonna be a problem. Sometimes we'll get a little bit of a warning and we can get it coming. And sometimes it just fail, and then we run with one. Sometimes our service company has one that they'll loan us until the new one comes.
So
But this does allow us to at least shorten the paperwork end of it, getting it on its way. So,
Pole station transformers right now for distribution of electricity in rural areas, you know, small areas. Whenever we have a storm, Crow Wing or Minnesota Power will go out and replace them. We just ordered a couple dozen today. Has a 3.5 year lead time.
wow.
So if another whopping storm comes through here, Minnesota Power and Crow Wing, they already are exhausted on those pole station transformers. So in regards to preparing for that, yeah, it's advisable. Even if you took like an average, you know, and had, I mean, how many variations of the type of pump would you? Or would it be?
So we have probably about 3 or 4 different sizes of lift station in town, main lift station. So we would have.
One
to
of
have
each
One of each.
on hand. Be worth
That
considering.
would get to be probably $100,000 a pump sitting there, so it's substantial. And. Yeah, so. I think we may have to do with the step station pumps going forward is maybe order 2 years of supply. Just to have way more than we need sitting
Yeah,
on the
those
shelf.
made here in America.
What's that?
Are they made here in America or are they?
The flights are foreign. I can't remember what the country they're made in. I want to say they are, well, somewhere in Europe. I think they might be German. And the smaller ones, I'm not sure. I think they're American, but I'm not sure. I'd have to double check.
All the lift stations have 2 pumps, one backup, right?
Yeah, they're called a duplex station.
Duplex stations, okay. All of them are like that?
All of our main ones are, yes.
Okay,
So we won't just stop
yeah,
pumping. But in a peak time, say around the 4th of July, we really have to have both of them there,
Yeah.
especially if we get a heavy rainstorm. Hiring summer help for Mike, we just got done talking about that. I don't know if there's really any need to go through that any further, but just so you're aware of it, it is in our plan to do that. Basically, Mike is looking for somebody who can help with things like mowing, some of the more less skilled tasks that he's occupying his time with. He has a lot of utility locates he's doing with all the construction that's been happening. And then just operating the new plant. He could use a seasonal person to help him out.
Yeah.
And that should be it for now for my strategic plan. I think there was just a few things I wanted to go over, and this is a document you don't have yet, but I just wanted to talk briefly about the upcoming cash flow document from PFM. You heard me mention about the lift station 1 rebuild. We're looking at an approximate cost of $382,000 on that. You'll see that built into here. That's the number John used. We're shooting for 2024, but like I said, that might get pushed back to 2025, which was our original plan. What that will do is a whole new control panel, backup generator, new concrete, larger wet well. That one fills up very fast, and when we have a storm, what we're finding is most of the town now, on their private wells, they have a backup generator, so they're still flushing even though the power's out. So backup generation has become very critical to how we operate. The Schaefer's development I've talked about, we still have it in place here. Our theory on that was if Schaefer's doesn't go, that area has several other properties that have some commercial interests that could go, that lift station serves them as well. So that same lift station, a lot of that same infrastructure would have to go underground no matter who develops. So we've left that mount in here in 2024, but it's probably going to get pushed back until one of them goes. And it may get refined depending on what their project looks like. So. We've talked about last year, a full-time employee. This too, we would time this with the addition of one of these larger developments coming in. There's a need for a part-time person in the summer, like we've talked about. Once we do have a larger development with the back truck and a few other things, we will need that second person. A lot of things just for safety. When somebody goes into a manhole, there has to be a second person there. And right now, we borrow from the maintenance department to perform those tasks. And then rates. So the other thing you will notice in the rates, we're looking to go up at a little bit more than the inflation rate. So inflation, we said it was 9.1. We're looking at 9.5 for this year and next.
Are you referring to CPI from like last month, last council meeting? Inflation rate?
I don't know exactly what it's called at the government, although I know it's
consumer
reported,
price
I've heard
index.
it's called 9 point.
Yep.
I missed your question.
The CPI right now,
8.6 for July.
8.6.
I mean, it's, yeah. it's-
Fluctuates monthly.
Yeah.
It does.
Right around 9, yeah.
The last number I had heard was 9.1.
So
So
it might not be
that was probably
terrible
less.
to take it to err on the high side in the event of.
I would anticipate that that's probably gonna be pretty close to where we end the year.
Yeah,
So,
Some of that also is dealing with some of our growth and stuff. The good news, if you wanted to call it that, is right now we're forecasting to hold our connection fee flat through 24. So good. And I think that's all I have, if you have any further questions.
Anyway, we're gonna talk about the backup generator with Tom up here or with you? The quote that was included from Ziegler.
We'll do that in September.
Okay.
I mean, unless you had a question or comment, you could certainly,
Well, yeah, you and I haven't spoken about the size, but this quote again is 125 kilowatt. To feed both City Hall and Pickle. Maybe I'll come and on the side and we can
Absolutely.
discuss it, go over it.
I
Yeah,
can
anything-
Put you in contact with our rep from Ziegler or
Yep.
Whoever's working with Holden Electric too. I imagine they had a lot to do with how it was sized, so.
Holden,
Mhm.
I'm assuming Ziegler would then subcontract to a local electrician to hook up,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, any feedback you would have would be great before, and then we can pull that together for the council.
Okay.
Thank you,
bet.
Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Bet.
Brian, you're up. I had a couple questions too, so I'll just put them down in writing.
Tom, that's a hard act to follow. You did a really nice job.
Generate, yeah.
Well, I'm glad I wasn't here. Yeah, don't give me a hard time. I was getting out of my car to come in the building and I spilled my water all over my shirt and my pants and everything. I'm like, okay, I'm going in with a t-shirt. So,
At least it wasn't red wine.
yeah. So the sheet I have in front of me right here is a capital improvement, same thing you have up there. And it's really hard for us to speculate and plan for long-term infrastructure and even the next few years, because we really don't know the situation as far as if we're going to be in our building in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, or where the situation is. So some of the stuff I put on here, I put on every year. And I try to run that business exactly though as if I owned it. And I do not waste money unless I don't spend money unless we absolutely need to, and it makes sense for the city of Nisswa and for Spirits of Nisswa. So, I mean, if we look back on this year, there's lots of things that I projected and said, okay, we might need this money for that. And it was not spent. And I do like the way the city is going for the future, where if we put it on here, it's going to go into that, it's going to go into a budget, a account, so that if we need that in the future, we can spend it so that every year I don't have to keep putting it on there. And I know I've wanted that for years, and I'm really glad that we're moving in that direction so that we can have more of an accurate budget, a realistic budget. But so before we, touch on some of these items, some of the situations you guys all realize, with Mr. Schaefer and his health, God willing, he'll have a full recovery and he'll be back in a little more active with the lease and Schaefer's. But as of right now, I've been dealing with Andy, and what we've discussed, I talked to him 2-3 weeks ago, and I want to come up with a list where I'll type it up on the computer and it'll talk about some of the stuff we know, like the roof. We know it's not our responsibility, but I would like to have that on a checklist. The furnace, AC, glass doors, garage doors, cooler, all that stuff. And then you have a checkoff list where say, this is our responsibility and this is Schaefer's responsibility. And obviously we would go over that with Jenny and possibly our lawyer before we would show it to them. But that way it's crystal clear for the future. I know a couple of years ago, we had a side door that rusted out and we wanted to get it fixed. Ted paid for it. He's like, I really wasn't supposed to pay for it, but it's like, I told you I'd pay for it. And then after I looked at the lease a little bit more and he's like, I probably shouldn't have paid for that, but I told you I would, so I did. But it would just be nice to have those things more a little black and white so that we know in the future, he knows in the future, if we're in that building, if we're in a new building, wherever we are with them. And I think that would help everybody out on that situation. And Andy thought they would be totally open to this, and I think it would be helpful.
Jenna, do we?
Not in the lease.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, do we have?
What's that?
A lease
That's not
agreement?
in the lease already.
Well, it talks about building the building, structure. And if it has every little detail in there, it's been a little bit since I looked at the lease, but if it's not in the lease, we want to just clarify it.
Okay,
It's not as detailed as we'd like it to be, so
exactly. Okay,
ideally we just further define it a little bit more,
got
so,
it. Yeah.
yes.
I'll just give you an
Email me a
example.
Copy of that.
Yes.
So I can review that.
I'll give you an example right now. We had the front, right in front of the front door, one of the sidewalks was dipping down about 1.5 inches, and it was a hazard for people coming in. So I talked with Tom, and he lined up for have a contractor come out. We were going to foam underneath it, lift it up. Well, he came out and he did some checking on it, literally the whole front sidewalk. And there's major areas in there that there's 3 to 4 inches of just air. The ground is settled underneath it. Whatever the situation is, he said it would be about, what was it, $4,000 or $5,000, $8,000 to foam it. We looked at it, it's cracking, it's almost 20 years, it is 20 years old. It doesn't pay to do that kind of repair to a 20-year-old sidewalk. So it hurt he's like, I'm actually losing business because, typically a person would say, yeah, we should repair it, and I'm gonna make $5,000 or $6,000 on this deal. He said, it's not in the best interest of you, and I don't want to run my business that way. So he recommended us going out and getting bids to have the whole thing repaired. And I've been dealing with Schaefer's on that. That should not be our bill at all, but that would be a situation where it would just be nice to have that on paper so that if there was a disagreement, we could plan for it in the future or have this situation figured out in advance. With that being said, for next year, I do have some money in the budget, and I have it in for this year also, just for some remodeling. That is just for painting and doing some touch ups. I know some of our walls desperately need to have a little bit of refreshing on it. I'm looking at repairs that are more short term, so that if we weren't in that building in 5 years, that we wouldn't be spending $50,000, but just small amounts to make it look presentable and nice. So when people come in, they're like, yeah, this is a business that people care about, and they want to come back and shop. So I have powder coating on there, display racks, bathroom sink, copiers, monitors, and the power floor cleaner. That is not for a new one. That is just for maintenance. Ours is about 3 years old right now. And I've been trying to do some repair on it myself, which I'm going to try again this year, but it might need some more detailed professional use maintenance on it next year. And a big one that I have on here is a new cooler. Once again, our coolers are working just fine. And if we do need a new cooler, I like to have it in the budget. We have 3 or 4 or 5 coolers that are secondary coolers from our main cooler. They're not cheap. I think we bought a wine cooler about 3 years ago, and it was about $8,000 or $9,000. So I have $10,000 on there in case we would need that. And once again, we don't need to spend it, we won't. So looking at 2024, because this is an area that is, I just feel that we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard spot right now, because our tile floors, I think they look terrible. I am somewhat embarrassed by them when I go into some of the stores in Baxter where they've done the remodeling, they have nice new floors in there. And we have this tile floor that is in a grocery store that would have been put in 30 years ago. So I would love to upgrade that. But once again, $25,000 is a lot of money. And we have to determine where we're going to be in this building before we want to put that type of investment into a project. And I have it in there, and that's just one of those things that we would Obviously, it's over $10,000. The council would need to approve it. It has to make sense for the city of Nisswa and Spirits of Nisswa. Side door and the front door, those are all this exactly in the same situation. Now, if the front door all of a sudden cracks and it gets bad, that's something that we can't avoid. And it is old. Every year I have a guy come in and do some adjustments on it. If we have to replace it, I want it in the budget. And I don't anticipate that we'll need to do that in 2024 either, but I want to have money there in case it does need to be repaired. Any questions on the capital improvement summary? All right, if we can go, which one do you have up first? For I have operations efficiency plan if you want, or you have employee, well, I can go to that one.
Whatever one you want to talk about, I can find.
I'll go to the employee one. So employee retention, I know, yeah, I look at the council and some of you are retired and some aren't. And if you are retired, if you just go back to when you were in the workforce, obviously you want to feel, you want to be treated fairly and respectfully, but if you were not treated with financially in the right way, doesn't matter what an employer does. And that is one thing that I feel Spirits in Nisswa needs to improve on. Jesse, you talked a little bit about hiring a part-time person and you were talking $16 an hour, that's probably not enough. And you were saying, might need to be more. I know we have the Baker Tilly pay scale, pay equity, and that was about 3 years ago. With the way our economy, our world is going, we almost have to look at that year by year because things have drastically changed in the retail business. I stop at some stores in Baxter and I see all day long $17 an hour. And we start at, I believe it's the low 12, I think it's 1284 or 1264, somewhere in there. So I do have some recommendations on here and some of this stuff needs some additional study. Then what we would do is we would take the information that we acquire either independently through myself, or if we hire a separate company to do this survey for us, if it's Baker Tilly, and then we'll take it to the city, to the liquor committee, and then make a recommendation to the board. But some of the areas that I would like to look at is and we wanted to do this for the last couple of years, but one thing or another has come up, if it's either the pandemic or our point of sale system. But we want to have a little bit more clear definition where when you hire somebody, they're going to be at this step in this grade with this job title. And then if they move over to this job title, if it's a key holder or if it's a night closer or if it's a assistant manager, whatever the situation is, that there would be a job description and that job description would have a separate pay scale and that would obviously be associated with a wage change on there. And I think the council would really appreciate that also, so that I'm not coming to you 2 or 3 times a year and saying, hey, I think we should give this person a raise because of this. It would be a little bit more laid out on paper and would be following our work scale that we've come up in the past. So that is something that I think is very necessary for Spirits in Nisswa, and it's going to be a high priority for us.
Is there something perhaps that the other municipal liquor stores in the state have? Or, I know we get that newsletter,
Yeah.
email once a month or so. Do you think that they would have a resource to be able to pass along that could help guide us to be able to develop a compensation structure of some sort?
So on situations like that, what I do is I send a email to Paul with the MMBA, Minnesota Beverage Association. And what he does is he sends it out to all the municipals, and then they will share that information with us. And we've done that in the past on other situations. And I feel very confident that we will get lots of information to help us come up with the correct job descriptions and see where their pay equity falls in with those descriptions also. So yeah, that'll be very helpful, and we do plan on doing that.
Just a comment as well, and Jesse probably wasn't on the council at the time, but when we did the compensation study last year, some of our comparable cities have municipal liquor stores as well. So that was incorporated as part of this. I think to Brian's point as well, what he's looking at is what is that difference with the private market? And how can we come up with a scientific analysis of that? I know that there's advertisements of certain wage hiring per hour, but Brian and I have talked about where that doesn't necessarily mean that you get that automatically. And so what are those criteria for that? And so it's important to reflect on also the, the municipal side, but also the private side, and where's that balance between?
So-
Ryan, do the full-time employees have a 401k or retirement?
So the full-time employees have everything available to them. And our part-time employees, if they work, I believe, over 30 hours a week, it might be 25 hours a week, then they do accrue sick time in there, which is really nice feature. If I'm correct on that, right?
Yeah, 50%
Of the year,
over a year. Yes, if they work at least 50%, then the next year they begin accruing.
1,040
that.
hours a year.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, then they get sick time.
I'm sorry, what was that?
And all
Para,
employees,
yeah,
yeah, get para if they meet a threshold.
So, back to what we were talking about with some of the municipals that I wrote down would be Alexandria, Park Rapids, you have Wadena, Aiken, and possibly Bemidji, just seeing where their pay is, and then using that and comparing it to ours. But then those are municipals, but then also, which is as much, if not more relevant, looking to see what Brainerd Baxter is paying, because that is in our backyard.
Cash wise or west side, more or
Right.
less private.
For private,
Yeah.
yes. And
Oh,
I don't just look at liquor stores, because Taco Bell was taking one of your potential employees away. So I need to look at gas stations, fast foods, different places like that, and have that information in there and use that to take to at least our first step, take it to the our liquor committee, and then go from there.
And of the maybe space scale will be on time.
So, with that, do the market survey, and then right now, and I've talked about this in the past, that, there is a 17% difference between a full-time employee and a part-time employee for doing the exact same job. If they were doing the exact same jobs, they don't do the exact same jobs, but we want to look at that and say, use potentially, if we need to, from the market survey, and say we do have 17% in there to make adjustments if necessary, which I do feel that they will be necessary. And then in addition to that, I am an advocate of summer pay, and I don't think I'll ever want to get away from that. Right now, we do $1.50 an hour. To be real honest, I want to increase that for potentially down the road, but all those puzzle pieces have to work together. And obviously the city council is going to vote on that. But getting back to what Tom was talking about earlier, I do have to be careful, because I do have a office manager and I have a assistant manager. So if our part-time employees get close to their wages, now all of a sudden there's a situation too. And
Almost.
we have to look at that and see how everything can work out in there. And I look at it, I'm very content with what I make, and I wouldn't turn down twice as much, but I'm content with what I make. But I just want to, if we would have to do something for those other two people, that's something that I'm not saying is on the table right now, but we'll have to look at that as a liquor committee.
I'm a part-time employee after 10 years. I think it's got $15 an hour.
You just got a $15 increase. Okay, so
If you equate out to $1.
If you equate out to $1.50 an hour for those seasonal employees, correct? Every year?
are you saying for the summer? I'm not following you correctly.
If I understood you correctly, you said your summer employees, to keep them, which you have good summer employees, that you increase their pay by $1.50 an hour.
Right,
So, go ahead.
and that is in the summer. Generally, it is the end of April. I think this year was literally, I think it was April 28th and it goes till September 28th, give or take a day.
Right, so if I'm a summer worker, if I've been there for, after 10 years, my wage has increased by $15 an hour, correct?
No.
No,
No,
Okay.
talking
No,
about
it's,
just,
no.
what we're doing is we're increasing $1.50 an hour. So we use the step. If a person's making $14.50 an hour, then that summer pay between that time period,
Oh,
would make it-
just for the summer, okay. got
just
it,
for the
got
summer,
it.
they would make an extra $1.50 an hour. Is there any questions on so not everything on employee satisfaction is pay. I strive as best I can and I try really hard to make sure the employees feel respected and feel appreciated as far as one of their birthdays, we get them, I zip over to Schaefer's and get cupcakes or a cake and pizzas and we try to do some employee appreciation / training events. So I try to incorporate that all in the retention and not saying I'm the greatest person out there for giving them cheerleading, but I do try. Is there any questions on the satisfaction employee retention?
Number 8, looking into having a separate organization do the market survey for competitive wages. That's going to be an additional cost of having that done.
And I think what we're at, we discussed that a little bit at one of our last meetings. It was Maggie, Jenny and I. And I think if we reached out to Baker Tilly and just asked them what they would charge, then we could come back and say, is that worth it for us or not? So I don't think it hurts at all for us to look into it and see what the charge is.
Sure, okay. And then the $40,000 is more or less a guesstimate of the,
So when I put the 40,000 on there, that was the step increases and then also if we looked at the 17% difference,
Yeah.
if that has to go in there and pay the pay increases from there.
well,
Baker Tilly has done a citywide survey, more than Waukegan and once before they were Baker Tilly and right and that. You have all that, you have all that information, so you can come in and take a look at it. One question I have is, if we were to develop something on this line where if we just eliminate that 17% difference for part-time and just your anniversary date is your anniversary date. Or do you go by, do you go by hours? So if they work 1,040 hours a year, takes 2 years to move up to the next step, but there's no 17% difference. I mean, I've seen it done that way before. We used to do it that way at the county with our part-time deputies years ago. But, same basic thing is trying to get everyone back up. And I understand where the full-time employees come in and say, well, this person is making this, but that person doesn't get sick time. They don't get PERA, they don't get
really no
medical.
benefits.
And if they're not there doing it, then you get to do it.
That's exactly right.
And
There,
I
so
tell my guys. the
so
same
there's
thing.
there's that too, but I'm just trying to figure. I understand their point, when they say, well, this person's making almost as much as I am, for a short period of time. We had the same problem with Grandview. But anyway, I just, definitely something for us to look at, but
If I could address that, literally today, if we just got rid of the 17%, that's not enough. If we're starting somebody at 1264, 17% of that, we're talking a couple bucks. And so now we're at $14 an hour, $14.50, let's just say, or $15. And if Brainerd Baxter's paying 17, I think it's crucial that we look at some of those, look at the survey and see what we're up against so that we can make the best decision.
You're absolutely right. I mean, more or less, you're,
not denying that.
yeah, more, right.
I'm just saying.
We are competing against, as a municipal liquor store, we are competing against the private industry and not too far down the road. And I do think 1284 that's not antiquated, that's almost archaic in hourly pay rates now. So finding a solution is a priority. But coming up with a long-term solution, a retention plan, a structured compensation matrix, more or less, for those that are going to be sticking around part or full. I'm all for that. And I think
Great.
that'll solve everything you've addressed.
And I just want to back up, John, I didn't mean to come off the way I did. I don't think you meant the way I took it.
I did.
Because you want to pay what's fair. And I didn't mean that you didn't.
Yeah.
And just wanted to make sure that I was clear on that.
Yep.
All right, if there's no other questions, we'll go on to the next one. Okay, operating efficiency. And let me just get to that sheet. Well, I really love to talk about this because if the more I can do to make my job efficient and the place, the happier I am. And I think we've made great strides this last year with just our point of sale system. I had Jenny down, I think a week ago, and I showed her on some of the reports. Just to back up a little bit, some managers out there just walk the store and they like, okay, we need this, and we need this. Before I came to Spirits, I didn't run. I was a salesman on the route. I never ran my route that way. I always used an iPad, and I like to look at numbers and use numbers to dictate what we order. And so I was really happy that our new system was so flexible and it gave me reports that I can use. With our last point of sale system, I wanted to have some numbers that I could analyze from the previous year, and I could look at all those numbers, but I would have to go through all these different steps. And I couldn't have it all on one spreadsheet, and it would take so much longer to do it. Where this news, and so I asked our last system, I'm like, can you do this? And they're like, okay, it would be $1,500 to do it. And the first year I'm like, well, that's a little bit much. I was a new employee. And I went back to them. I'm like, we're willing to pay that much for these reports, specialized reports that would help do my job efficiently. And I waited 3 to 5 years. They could never get to it because what they were doing is they were trying to develop a new software system for themselves. And with the new system that we looked at, it gives us so many different variables and so many different ways of running reports. And literally, if there's not a way that's going to be each manager out there make them happy, then I don't know what is, because I can do almost anything we want on our point of sale system. And took me a couple of months to figure out what reports I liked and which ones I didn't. And there's still a million reports on that system that I haven't even delved into because we started with them in the beginning of the summer. But I just love the way I do my ordering. It has a comparison from previous years and it has made my job so much more efficient. Now, are there areas out there that we still need to learn and potentially ask for new reports? Yeah, there is. I know with Maggie and with Mary on getting some of the end of the month reports, we're still working on trying to fine tune that and get exactly what we want. But with this system, we might have to pay for these reports, which is fine, but it will get us what we want. And it will get us as efficient as we can be out there. So I like that part about it. And I do have on here $1,000, and that is just for if we need to purchase equipment. Now, if I'm on some holidays, I have to put orders in on Sundays. And I remember this summer I was up in Bemidji using my wife's laptop, and it was a little bit of a disaster, more so because of Wi-Fi. But I'm looking at potentially seeing what other managers are using, because I've been to some conventions out there that are using the same system we are, and they're sitting there typing away and not having any problems at all, putting orders in on the weekend. Or if I'm on vacation, I want to get my orders in on a Monday, it'd be nice to have that flexibility. And we're not talking very much money.
Is $1,000 gonna get you a new computer to do that?
Right.
What is the equipment?
It would be a laptop. We have a laptop, and it would either be putting on what we want on that laptop, or else getting a separate laptop that I would use in that situation. So we are talking a computer. Any questions? So policies and ordinances, I just think it's important that we try to follow what the city does. I have just one example, our reader board out on the highway, and I would love to have that changed more frequently, but the city wants those messages to be up there for 15 seconds. They don't want it to be flashing or to be fading in and out, fading which way. And I felt that we followed that policy almost to the T. In the beginning, it was a little hairy because we hit a few buttons that we shouldn't have, and there was a couple flashes in there, and we got called out on it, but it was unintentional. And I feel that we follow that. Jenny was down with this lady that used to work with OSHA, and just going through and looking at our business and all the other departments and saying, okay, if OSHA did come through here, this is what they're going to look for. And that was very helpful. Her and I, we joked around a lot. But we just want our place to be safe for our employees and for the customers. One example is the sidewalk. If there's something out there that's not safe, we want to make sure that we fix it. And we want to follow what the city recommends for policies and ordinances.
Do you have a defib?
Can you say it again?
Do you have a defibrillator?
We do not. So this last year, unfortunately, we have had someone pass away in our parking lot. And I did CPR on her, but we did not notice her out in that. What she did is she came in, purchased some product, and then she was out in her vehicle, and we had a customer tell us that she was out there, and it looked like she passed out. So we did CPR on her, but we did not get to her in time. And we've looked at a defibrillator, and there's pros and cons to it. Now, we would have to be trained on it. And at first I was really all for it, because we do have a lot of, I wouldn't say elderly people working for us, but people my age, and I could have a heart attack, anytime, in my age. So it would be nice to protect our employees, but we'd all have to be trained on that. And then talking with the fire chief, he's like, we're so close to you guys that he It's like, I'm not sure that it's necessary, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's areas that we are still investigating on and determining. We do want to partake in the city is looking at doing additional training for CPR and some of those other areas. If that doesn't happen through the city, we want to do it ourselves and put it in our budget for Spirits in Nisswa.
Is
But as of
there-
right now, we do not have a defibrillator.
Because CPR, is one thing, defib training is actually easier than CPR.
Yeah,
It really is. And with a heart attack or something, 5 minutes makes a huge difference. And, unless they happen to be right now, it's just something to think about. Doesn't hurt to have it there.
I would actually love to have it there. It just, back to the person that passed away. The fire department was never even contacted. We called 911. They didn't know anything about it until after the fact. So I would feel terrible if one of our employees or a customer we felt could have prevented it in time and we didn't have that equipment there. So I'm agree 100% with you.
And then that's something they should be talking with the dispatchers about.
Tom,
Can you come up to the mic? Thanks.
So I would ask you to talk to Janet with MMUA. She's our safety program director, but they would offer up to it's a matching grant up to $10,000 to purchase something like that. So,
including the training.
and she'll help you write the grant too. So
Well, my personal opinion, I don't think there's any reason why we shouldn't have one over there. 1, 2, provide the training, and 3, do the same thing for the pickle. If there's not anything there already or in place, it's a ton of foot traffic. A lot of people, whether they're staff or their patrons. 5 minutes is everything. It's also so 60 seconds. And doesn't matter how close or far away somebody is, we save a life, we can save a life. We had an individual in here that was saved by our fire department, a month ago? His wife, right? And be great to be able to offer that.
So that's something that you can look into.
I'll definitely look into that.
And then you can revise
I'll
this
add- yeah.
accordingly.
sorry to interrupt you there, Brian.
No,
Just thought
thank
it
you.
was-
Thanks,
Thanks,
Tom.
Tom.
Yeah, appreciate it. And structurally discussed.
So I do have on here long range, but we pretty much covered all that. Checking to see who's responsible for items at Spirits in Nisswa and just getting quotes on the jobs.
Great. Thank you.
Now, I'm not sure, do you have any questions as far as the budget goes?
I think we're gonna look at those and then Jenny's gonna provide us a summary and then in September.
Okay,
We'll be with everything you're gonna end up,
unless you have any questions, thank you for your time.
If I do, speaking for myself, if I have any questions, I'll just jot them down. Then I'll get them to both of you.
Okay.
And answer them.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Brian,
Thank you,
thank you.
Brian. Appreciate it.
I sent it to the boss lady, and she told me yes.
Okay, we will quickly run through admin. If that's all right.
Yes.
And then we will adjourn quickly so we can move into our 7 o'clock. So first off,
Our attorney.
oh, yes.
Sorry.
So in your packet for our admin team, there was a summary of our strategic plan conversation that we had with the department. I am going to ask, are you okay kicking off capital improvement plan? Maggie's gonna just give some feedback and some thoughts thus far on our capital improvement plan process as our supporting role with all of the other city departments. And then I will go through the other items.
Okay, well, I'm
Thanks.
gonna make this quick. But we started working on the capital improvement plan in 2020 for the 2021 budget, working with all the department heads to kind of put planning on a sheet of paper so we can see what it looks like in the future and what we should be saving for, replacement things, and kind of working through that. All the staff has been good about learning a new process and a procedure, we'll say, the past few years. And so the first year we did this, it was like, let's work on 3 to 5 years. And now we're kind of working up to 10. And I feel like the departments are really kind of streamlining some of that in their capital improvement plan, which will be in working document forever. Because things change and things can last longer or shorter depending on. So we've worked really hard on that. We've mentioned a few times that we're still working on the budget for the building matrix itself. So hopefully we'll kind of work to combine those two documents in the future, what that will look like. I think we're unsure at this point, but kind of putting it all full circle to see what we can do to kind of streamline some of those things. And also working on our capital reserve matrix. So Amber brought up, we had put away $100,000 for parks and $100,000 for community center. And so trying to work on putting those matrices together so we don't have a huge $200,000 truck purchase in 1 year. And it's, how can we even that out throughout the years? So work in progress, but I think we're making big steps forward in the right direction. So I think overall, it's going well.
Hopefully I can see all the way across the room here. I'm just going to scroll through pages and we'll quickly highlight some things. This page on the strategic plan for employee retention satisfaction was just a reflection on the fact that we've created the employee retention committee now. We'll get that implemented and ready to go for starting 2023. It was nice to have something that didn't cost any money to implement and something that we've accomplished. And we will move forward with that process this fall and starting next year. Safety plan, we've talked about that a little bit tonight as well as last week. All city staff receiving proper safety training. What I've been working on with our safety coordinator with the league and other resources is developing a more complete safety program that will apply to all city departments. So it's going to be different depending on your department and what your safety training requirements are. But to provide that structure that all staff will participate in training, and then options for training. So we have in-person options for some, we have some on-demand video options, and our safety coordinator is also going to provide me with a flash drive of other training videos that staff can watch as well. So hopefully across the board, there will be options that will work for every department so that we have the proper safety training. With that, she has mentioned the safety grants, and we can talk more about the grant process in general in September, but I think taking a city-wide approach to those opportunities and maximizing. So if we go for a safety grant, what departments need, what items, and making sure we're being as inclusive as we can be to just get the maximum bang for whatever matching dollars we have for that as well. So for the safety training, establishing a policy that'll come forward to the city council September, October, probably, to then have implementation for 2023 and getting all staff on board with the safety training that they need.
So is this going to include all the aware training that's
Yes.
necessary? Okay.
Yep. Improving building security and safety. So this speaks to the quote that we've received for the controlled access camera options, and just referencing that we have the American Rescue Plan Act funding opportunity, and should this be a priority the council determines later on, or if we wait a year or whatever that looks like, we'll talk about that more this fall as well. But improving the security of the building, of all buildings, but we've talked a lot about City Hall specifically, and taking some steps forward to doing that as well. Would be nice to hopefully develop a plan for that. I'll talk a little bit more about building needs here for City Hall in a minute, but any questions on that one? Okay. So a document management system concept. This was brought forward by Bethany last week in planning and zoning about having a more centralized software program to facilitate permits and documents within planning and zoning. Maggie and I have been talking about this idea as well, just from general document records retention, management of all the different types of forms and reports and things that we have to keep track of as well. So this is just another version of what Bethany spoke to, but I think that there's an opportunity to take the similar needs across departments and find something that would work citywide that we all could use and access. If there's integration functions that developers can use or the public to facilitate exchange of information, that would be great as well. So my thought on this is we'd spend 2023 doing some research and looking at the different options, because there's probably dozens and dozens of different software opportunities out there, and finding one that works for the city, possibly using software we have already with our payroll and our financial software. They have some options, but wanting to just take some time and looking through those opportunities. So that would greatly help operations efficiency, since many departments usually touch the same project, and how do we work through that seamlessly, efficiently, digitally, all those great things. Long-range infrastructure operations. And so this will speak to the spreadsheet that I provided to you on your desk in color tonight. But this is circling back on the presentation from Widseth this spring about the need to make improvements to City Hall. And so I'm going to go to this spreadsheet. And so it's this large spreadsheet here. What they had identified were, depending on the area, civil, architectural, mechanical, electrical, etc. They estimated some costs for some of the needs that we would have. And then they prioritized for us low, medium, and high. And what I would like to have a conversation with the council in September is looking at these high priority items, potentially for next year. And they are highlighted in orange, and it's really, the big things are window replacement and the improvements to the roof that we need, so we don't have the leaking that we've experienced for many years. I think those things can be done without concern about, we can talk about then interior remodel needs, whether we want to add on to the back of the building, all of those things can still happen. But these things would be really helpful just from a structural perspective. There are other things too, as well as some of the siding and the stonework and things that need some improvement as well. So those specifically, I think we should look at in more detail and talk about, which we can do that in September. Any questions on that one specifically? No? Great. Maybe the last thing I have is there were a couple of requests from the council to start to develop a land inventory sheet. So here's my first attempt at doing that. What I did was just think of the upcoming potential projects we would have at the city, and the blue represents my just gut thought on timing for when we might need property to facilitate those projects. I haven't given this to staff. There's a lot more work that would need to be involved, certainly with this, but I wanted to at least get something started. Please let me know if you have other ideas or thoughts or things that we should be putting on this document so we can start to have a reference. And then I do note at the bottom left, just funding opportunities that we could consider for some of these projects: general fund levy, using reserves, bonding, grants, donations, local option sales tax, enterprise fund reserves for certain things. So just something to keep in mind, as there's certainly a variety of funding opportunities to help facilitate some of this land need. But these were the major things that came to mind right away. And I wanted to at least start something, and we can continue to build it out as we go through this year and continuing into next year. Any questions on this document?
Yeah, I guess one quick one, water system property.
Yep.
What do you think a funding source would be for that? Similar to what, a grant like you initially thought Stopper's office could get for us earlier in the year?
Probably.
I would like to, if we could bundle that with the actual project itself.
Yep.
Here's the land we need to facilitate the construction of a new water system.
Right.
Yep.
That gonna happen again? Another,
Appropriation of
Yes.
the funding. I have not heard if that will come to be for next year, but it's been in place for 2 years now, and I think there's been really positive feedback about it. So I'm hoping that that will continue because I think it's a great way to invest in local projects.
did we get any feedback on our original request? Like how we should maybe change it the next go around, make it a little more compelling?
We did not. I did ask for feedback, but certainly there would also be opportunity to submit requests to our Minnesota senators. So Senator Klobuchar and Smith had the same opportunities. And so maybe we can put them out to multiple places depending on the opportunities there. But yeah, and we'll maybe spend some more time working on that next year. Yeah. And as far as the admin budget goes, there's no change from this year. Really, the increase reflects just wages, which is a majority component of this department's budget for myself, for Maggie and Kiki, and no other substantive changes with regards to that.
I think you're the only department that didn't have inflationary increases, it looks like.
We don't have utilities and some of those things, but we have insurance and we have some of that as well, but yeah. I did send an email just today to the council. We will need to modify our September workshop dates. So if you can check your email and let me know, that would be great. We will likely, our workshop will be towards the very end of the month. So we will definitely send information to the council well in advance so we can have conversations, we can ask questions as I pull together specific levy information for you so we can set that preliminary levy. But we will work to reschedule and communicate that out and we'll go from there. And in the meantime, please just let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we can adjourn and then maybe just take a couple minute recess
5-minute break.
and then we'll get started.
All right.
Okay.
So I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Take a 10-minute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I bow it.
Oh,